This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN's Newswatch. I'm Heather Sells. Police and the FBI are working the scene of the deadly school shooting in Southern California today. Investigators have also been gathering evidence at the suspect's home, trying to figure out a motive for yesterday's attack. Mark Martin joins us now with an update. Mark.
That's right, Heather. Authorities say the alleged gunman killed 2 students. 3 others were injured, as well as the alleged shooter. Schools are closed Friday in Santa Clarita as the community mourns the loss of the 2. Investigators are trying to determine why a student allegedly began his 16th birthday by shooting 5 classmates and himself at Saugus High School. The teen reportedly pulled a .45 semi-automatic pistol from his backpack, and authorities say he seemed to shoot at random. The shooting spree lasted only 16 seconds, but investigators say he killed a 14-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl and injured others. One of the survivors escaped into teacher Caitlin Holt's choir room as she used a piano to barricade the door.
I should have never had to treat a gunshot wound as a choir teacher, and there's something really wrong and something has to change because I held a bleeding child today in a room with 40 sobbing children.
Students and parents shared what they experienced.
I just heard like 4 shots and it seemed like kind of far away, so I didn't know if it was real or not, and then like he came running in. It like really hit me.
My daughter texted me saying, "I love you, Mom. I hope I get to see you again." So yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Horrific moments there. Authorities say one of the injured students has been released from the hospital and 2 others are recovering. Investigators say the gunman used his last bullet on himself, and authorities say he is listed in grave condition. Heather, back to you.
Thanks, Mark. And David Haig is the senior pastor at Grace Baptist Church in Santa Clarita, which held one of several prayer vigils last night. And he joins us now. Pastor Haig, thank you for joining us, and we are so sorry about what has happened in your community.
Thank you, Heather. We appreciate that. It's a great challenge, but those always provide great opportunities for us who know Christ.
Yes. Well, I want to ask you about the service last night. Tell us about what that was like.
Yeah, I was really proud of our staff. We started at 10 o'clock in the morning to realize we needed to do something for the community. We have a number of faculty and students from Saugus. Many have known those who were injured. We even have some contact with the mother of the shooter. And we began to realize, you know what, we need to just provide a place for 2 things. Number one, for people to come together and realize that, you know, when tragedy hits, you're not alone. But also to bring the truth and the peace that only comes through Jesus Christ to a real hurting community. We had well over 1,000 people show up. We really had no idea who was going to come.
I want to ask you, yeah, it's so incredible that you had so many people there. Why do you think so many people were coming, and what was the atmosphere like?
You know, a lot of students. We had hundreds of students and their parents. I think 2 things happened. I think that our community realized, you know, this never happens here in Santa Clarita. We're one of the safest places to live in the world. And yet it does happen, and it tells us that something's broken and that we're looking for answers. We also have a tremendous congregation and a large youth staff. We have a lot of contacts, and we put the word out, and people came. We spent some time in God's Word. Our youth pastor, one of them, did a great job just encouraging people to realize that this takes time to deal with. We did a lot of singing. We did a lot of praying. And then after the service proper was over, we had brought in a couple of experts on school shooting and trauma, and we allowed people to stay and hear how they should process these things. We also had a number of counselors available for students in our student ministry center. So it was a huge undertaking. Our staff put it together pretty quickly, and the community really received it well.
That's beautiful. We just have about 30 seconds, but what are your thoughts going forward, what the community is going to need?
You know, these kinds of events kind of create a dividing line. I remember, you know, with 9/11, there's what you were doing before 9/11 and then what happens after. And so here in Santa Clarita, it's going to be November 14th. And I think it has really brought the community together. I mean, tragedies like this call upon us to put aside the things that we may have that are different and realize we're all part of the human family. And as a church, we see this as a great opportunity to listen, show compassion, but also extend in a courageous way, the gospel of Jesus Christ, because ultimately souls need to be not just placated, but healed, and healed through the gospel.
Absolutely.
So that's
well, we are out of time, but thank you for the work you're doing and for being here today, Pastor. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for what you guys do. We all count on it.
Thank you. Well, turning to other news, for the second day of public impeachment hearings, the House committee heard from only one witness. Former Ukraine Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch was dismissed by President Trump, and her removal is one of the events at the center of the impeachment effort. She told lawmakers today that Trump's remarks about her in the call to Ukraine's president felt like a vague threat.
I was shocked and devastated that I would feature in a phone call between two heads of state in such a manner where President Trump said that I was bad news to another world leader and that I would be going through some things. So it was a terrible moment. A person who saw me actually reading the transcript said that the color drained from my face. I think I even had a physical reaction. I think, even now, words kind of fail me.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats believe the president withheld military assistance to Ukraine until that government opened a bribery investigation of Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter. Well, in other news, we'll have more on this on Faith Nation tonight, so be sure to watch that. In other news, the immigration crisis in our country regularly makes the headlines, and it frequently comes up on the campaign trail. But when it comes to taking it up in Congress, there appears to be little momentum. So a new proposal aims to inject new life into the debate. The Evangelical Immigration Table, a group of evangelical leaders and churches, is initiating this, and the main focus is restitution. Here to explain it is Travis Wassa. He's the Vice President for Public Policy and General Counsel at the Southern Baptist Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission in Washington, D.C. Travis, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Talk about this proposal. It seems like it's really looking at the big problem, which is 11 million immigrants in our country with no legal status. How might this concept of restitution help to fix that problem?
What this plan is really all about is providing a pathway, providing a mechanism for those who are in our country illegally to step forward, to come out of the shadows, to admit that laws have been broken, and to make things right. And this plan is not for everybody. There will be criminal background screenings, there's other requirements, but fundamentally what this plan is all about, what this proposal is about, is providing a way forward for those immigrants who are here, who are a part of our communities, who are already contributing to our neighborhoods, to our churches, and want to be a part of the American story.
What do you think it is about this proposal that both parties might be able to get on board with?
Well, we'll have to see how both parties react to this. We're obviously living in a polarizing time, but I think, Lifeway did a poll a couple of years ago and showed that two-thirds of evangelicals are supportive of an earned path to some kind of legal status when paired with border security. So I think, there is some call an exhausted majority who are looking for an answer to this problem and looking for an answer to our deeply broken immigration system.
What kind of feedback have you received so far to it?
Well, the feedback has been really positive. I think a lot of folks are interested that we're talking about in what is some ways the thorniest of all of the immigration problems, those 11 million undocumented immigrants who are a part of who are living in our neighborhoods and communities right now. And I think most people recognize that deporting all 11 million is not a solution. And so there has been a lot of interest in coming up with a proposal that certainly is not amnesty. It recognizes that laws have been broken, but still charts a way forward.
Do you have any hope that Congress might take up immigration reform in the next year, or is this more kind of a get ready, let's wait until after 2020 and maybe some things can move forward then?
Well, anything can happen, and what we want is to be injecting good ideas into the discussion, into the bloodstream here in D.C., so that if there is an opportunity, if there is an opening, obviously the Supreme Court taking up the DACA case that decision will be handed down next June. So what we want is to be ready in case there is an opportunity and an opening for us to do something constructive on immigration.
All right, Travis, we appreciate your insights and what you're doing on this project. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, in Syria, while some U.S. troops are still there to protect the country's eastern oil fields, the Pentagon has ordered the withdrawal of troops elsewhere. Chuck Holton reports that the Turkish military is taking advantage of the situation with devastating consequences for civilians.
Turkey and Russia now patrol northern Syria side by side as Turkish President Erdogan moves ahead to annex much more land bordering his country. Local Syrians showing their displeasure, with some pelting a Turkish patrol with rocks near the town of Derek. One protester was run over by a Turkish vehicle and later died. Turks fired what they claimed to be tear gas to disperse the protests. The questionable chemical, however, sent 10 unconscious people to the hospital, a result rarely caused by tear gas. Doctors at this hospital in Tal Tamr have treated more than 700 casualties so far.
The Kurds in this area have faced so much injustice from this invasion, and we sometimes feel powerless to stop the bloodshed.
So this reconnaissance we're doing of the frontline area here just south of Sarikania shows that this YPG position is surrounded on three sides at the moment by the Free Syrian Army, off to the west, to the north, and to the east. But they're not quite as worried about being attacked from those positions as they are about indirect fire. That's mortars and artillery, because they just had a round land back behind them. They don't know if that's like a reconnaissance by fire or if the enemy's actually bracketing them to try to bomb this target. The other thing we have to worry about is what we can hear overhead right now, and that's the Turkish drones circling, looking for a target. Many of the wounded at this hospital are victims of Turkish drone attacks. Dave Eubank, leader of the Free Burma Rangers aid group, has been working in the area for more than 3 weeks.
We're at a mobile casualty collection point. We had to hide our vehicles because of Turkish drone strikes. In the last 3 days, 26 people have been killed by drone strikes in this area alone.
It's clear these drones are going after more than just military targets. Eubank's own marked ambulance took a hit November 2nd, wounding 2 and killing one of their ethnic Kachin medics, 37-year-old Zhao Sang. He died on his baby daughter's first birthday. But Turkey's president is undeterred, vowing to continue the fight against what he calls terrorists, while local aid groups estimate more than 300,000 have fled the area. Meanwhile, medical people on the ground have labeled these civilian drone strikes as war crimes.
And so we asked for a stop to the Turkish drones. 5 ambulances have been taken out earlier. And so this has got to stop. It's evil.
All we want is to be able to live in peace like any other nation. We just hope President Trump will remember us, and maybe then he can do something to help our situation.
Chuck Holton, CBN News, Tal Tamr, Syria.
Coming up, how Christians can be praying for the important pastors in their lives and why one expert says those in leadership need it.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern Gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he has, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Lifeway Research reports that many pastors are dealing with incredible stress. In one survey, 84% said they are on call 24 hours a day, and more than half said they frequently find the role of pastor overwhelming. In response, Wheaton College is hosting a one-day summit next month for pastors and church leaders to talk about leadership, burnout, and mental health. Dr. Ed Stetzer, the executive director of the Billy Graham Center at Wheaton, joins us now to explain what's happening. Dr. Stetzer, thanks for joining us. Talk a little bit about the inspiration behind this summit. I understand that it was in part due to the suicide of Pastor Jared Wilson in California.
That's right. So Jared was an advocate in and around anti-suicide work and advocacy. And when he died by suicide, we actually started with Derwin Gray and I, a pastor in North Carolina, started a conversation and said, do we need to kind of bring evangelical pastors and leaders together to talk about, well, how do pastors get help? You know, how do the helpers get help? And we wanted to be sure that that Jared's wife, Julie, was comfortable with that. She gave us a strong affirmation. And so we invited Rick Warren, he's coming, and then a group of counselors and leaders who talk a lot about burnout ministry, mental health, and pastors, and more.
I want to ask you, those Lifeway numbers are sobering. Do you think that there are perhaps more demands on pastors at this point in time that there have been in the past? Are there dynamics that have changed?
Yeah, I think for sure. I actually was leading Lifeway Research when we did that study a few years ago. And one of the things that we saw was the complexity of pastoring has become much more challenging today. You know, when we looked at the New Testament, these were house churches of, 15, 20 people. When we look historically, there might be one pastor who kind of acts as a parson or a shepherd for a group of people in rural England or wherever. Here we have complexities. We have the challenges of maybe their own mental health struggles, burnout, constantly being on demand, now online, internet, and more. Yeah, I think ultimately that our pastors are often struggling and in need of care. And we want to start a conversation. Maybe it starts the wrong word. We want to be part of a conversation to help people say, how do we help our pastors to finish well, to not burn out or take other unhealthy actions or decisions?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder, we have phones and we expect things on our phones to be on demand. Maybe we're expecting that of our pastors as well. I also want to ask you, do you think that it's harder for pastors to acknowledge that they're struggling and to get help because of their position?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, that's why we're doing this summit, the GC2 summit, is because we think there's not a generally safe pathway for a pastor to say, hey, I need some help. There's the expectation that, again, the helpers don't need help. But the reality is pastors do. We actually have, a strong number of pastors who talk about burnout and struggle, a minority, but a significant minority who talk about struggles with mental illness, spiritual struggles, and more. I just think ultimately pastors are people. But the challenge is they're often people who don't have a helpful pathway to get the assistance and maybe the intervention that they need.
Right. What are you hoping to do at the summit specifically to support pastors and other church leaders?
Well, partly what we want to do is just help create a space for pastors to have this conversation, and then hopefully help evangelical churches to realize that pastors are not all, always 100% having it all together. But how can we help our pastors? How can boards help in speaking to the lives of pastors? How can pastors get help and more? So with a series of counselors, we've got several professional counselors, PhD therapists, and more. Pastors like Derwin Gray, Rick Warren, and others. Thinkers like Ruth Haley Barton who help us think about burnout. Our hope is that we can help pastors find sustainable ways to have long-term fruitful ministry in accountability and relationship with others.
Sounds great, Dr. Stetzer. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Up next, we will be looking at the latest on the Cleveland Browns' Myles Garrett after a big brawl during the NFL's Thursday night game. Stay with us.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
The Cleveland Browns defensive end Myles Garrett is suspended for at least the rest of the season. The NFL made the decision today after Garrett ripped the helmet off Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph and hit him with it. Our Ephraim Graham talked with CBN Sports' Sean Brown about what happened.
First of all, the NFL game last night, the Browns and the Steelers, with the Browns on top 21-7.
21-7. Exciting evening, especially at the end, but I'll get to that in a moment. The game itself, the Browns just came in, and this is the Browns team that we were hoping to see all season. Okay. I mean, they showed up, they dominated on both sides of the ball. Mason Rudolph, Steelers quarterback, just couldn't really get moving. He couldn't get into a groove. He was throwing the ball all over the place. Besides receivers' hands, he just threw the ball everywhere, and that's due to the Browns' defense. And so, towards the end of the game, though, obviously, when you're a quarterback and you can't get into a rhythm, your emotions are all over the place. Yeah. You're frustrated. You could see it every time he exited the field. Yeah. He was frustrated. He's throwing his hands up in the air. It's like, what's going on tonight? He just had a really, really off night. And one of the last plays of the game was just a few seconds left. Myles Garrett, defensive end for the Browns, almost had a sack, but obviously Randolph was able to get the ball off. But he bear hugs him and begins to bring him to the ground. Didn't pick him up and slam him, but begins to bring him to the ground. And Rudolph didn't like it. Yeah. And so begins to take out of frustration, begins to take Garrett's helmet off, and Garrett didn't like that. And so he retaliates and begins to, begins to take his helmet off. Now, mind you, if you mess with the quarterback, the offensive line's coming in. They're coming in, that's their job to protect the quarterback. Absolutely. And so you've got two Steelers offensive linemen face-to-face with Garrett alone, and he's frustrated now because he's being ganged up on. Yeah. He takes Rudolph's helmet off and begins to fling it over and hits him in the head. Now, I'm watching this. My wife's asleep. I'm watching this, and I'm yelling, oh, because it's dangerous. Right now, at a time where concussions are high and they're trying to reduce that, you want to keep your emotions in check. You have to keep your emotions in check. I expect a fine, a suspension happening before lunch for Garrett. And they were already winning. I mean, 21-7. They dominated the whole game. It was unnecessary. And he should be penalized for that severely. He should be penalized. It's unacceptable. You're a professional, and part of your job is keeping your emotions in check. That's part of professionalism. It might not have moved in the direction that it did if Rudolph didn't take his helmet off, but even still.
No, unbelievable. How are things shaping up for college football, especially after Alabama's loss to LSU?
Okay, now this is the game I was waiting for.
Yes, I remember.
It didn't deliver the way I thought it should deliver because I thought Alabama would play better. However, Alabama lost. LSU still on top. LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia are in the top 4. Because of the loss, Alabama has slipped down to 5. And here we head into the last 2 or 3 games into the season as the playoffs begin to shape up. I hope to see LSU, Clemson. We'll see how it pans out. That's the game I want to see.
All right.
But we will see.
All right. Real quick, Benjamin Watson, big move to help pro-life.
Yes, Ben Watson, big, advocate for pro-life. He's decided to place ultrasounds in healthcare providers all across the country. I mean, that's a huge move, just educating people on, hey, what you're actually doing, the decision that you're making when you decide to have an abortion.
All right, thank you, Sean.
And you can catch Going the Distance with Sean Brown this weekend on the CBN News Channel. That's Saturday at 6:30 and Sunday at 7:30, both Eastern times. After the break, what's next for Kanye West as the famous rapper continues to share how Jesus has changed his life.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
For impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Kanye West is making headlines again as he prepares to visit a well-known megachurch. West will head to Houston, Texas this weekend for a live interview at Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church. TMZ reports his discussion with the well-known pastor will last for about 20 to 30 minutes and will be held before the megachurch's 17,000 attendees. West is expected to talk about the impact Jesus Christ has had on his life in recent times. The rapper's latest album, Jesus is King, has dominated the Christian charts, taking all top 10 spots on both Billboard's Hot Christian Songs and Hot Gospel Song charts. And that's it for this edition of Newswatch. Have a great day.